We are glad to welcome you to the Lucas History Channel. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more stories like this. Enjoy your viewing. The scent of oil and burning rubber filled my nostrils as I stepped into the dimly lit car repair shop. The clatter of tools and the occasional hiss of air compressors created a dissonant soundtrack that mirrored the chaos in my mind. This place wasn't unfamiliar. I had been here many times before for routine maintenance. But today, it felt different. Today, the place bore the weight of a secret that had quietly torn through my life. I was here to confirm something that had been gnawing at me for weeks. My wife, Clara, had become distant. Her phone calls and messages, once full of warmth and laughter, now felt clipped and evasive. And then there were the trips to the shop, far too frequent for a car that ran just fine. "Mr. Miller," a voice called out, breaking through my thoughts. It was Paul, the shop's front desk manager. A man in his mid-50s, with a belly that hung over his belt and a perpetual grin. He was the kind of guy who'd tell you a joke even if your world was falling apart. "Didn't expect to see you here today. Everything all right with the car?" Paul asked, his voice tinged with genuine concern. "Yes and no," I replied, my tone heavier than intended. "I just wanted to check on something." Paul's brow furrowed, but he nodded. "Well, if there's anything I can help you with, you let me know." I nodded, thanked him, and began wandering further into the shop. The further I went, the more anxious I became. My heart pounded as I approached the back office, a small, cluttered room with greasy handprints on the doorframe. It was where I suspected Clara and Liam, the young, rugged mechanic, had been spending their time. I paused outside the door, willing myself to breathe. Through the small window, I caught sight of Liam. He was leaning against the desk, his face animated as he spoke to someone hidden from view. Then, as if in slow motion, Clara's unmistakable laugh rang out, a laugh I hadn't heard in weeks. It felt like the ground beneath me shifted. My hand clenched into a fist at my side, and for a moment, I considered barging in. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I waited, hidden behind the door. Her words floated out, soft and sweet, punctuated by occasional silences that spoke of shared, unspoken truths. "I can't believe we've been able to keep this up," Clara said, her voice light yet tinged with something darker. "Neither can I," Liam replied, his tone smug. "It's risky, but worth it." A cold knot twisted in my stomach. I stepped away from the door, retreating into the shop's shadows, feeling utterly exposed despite being unseen. My thoughts raced, each one more tumultuous than the last. How long had this been going on? Why? I walked back to the reception area, where Paul stood chatting with a customer. He caught sight of me and gave me a wave, but I didn't return it. My focus was on the garage exit. I needed air, fresh air, away from the suffocating betrayal that lingered in this place. As I stepped outside, the late afternoon sun seemed almost mocking in its brilliance. I sat on a curb, head in my hands, and wondered what to do next. Could I confront her? Should I? And what would I say? The answers eluded me, just as my wife's love now seemed to. I stayed outside the shop for what felt like an eternity, trying to muster the courage to face the truth head-on. The thought of Clara's laugh, so familiar, yet now foreign, echoed in my mind like a cruel taunt. My fists clenched and unclenched as I debated my next move. Was it better to confront her here, in this grimy backdrop, where her duplicity unfolded? Or should I wait until we were home, where the walls of our life together might offer a shred of dignity to the inevitable explosion? The door to the shop creaked open, and I instinctively turned. Clara stepped out, brushing her hands over the hem of her skirt, an oddly self-conscious gesture that made my heart sink further. Behind her, Liam followed, wiping his hands on a rag with a nonchalance that twisted the knife deeper. I called her name before I could stop myself. "Clara." She froze mid-step, her head snapping toward me. For a fleeting moment, something like guilt flickered across her face. Then, just as quickly, she composed herself, her usual mask slipping into place. "Mark," she said, her voice overly casual. "What are you doing here?" The words were like sandpaper against my skin. "I could ask you the same thing." Her eyes darted to Liam, who had stopped a few paces behind her. He offered a smirk, as if daring me to react. I ignored him, my focus solely on her. "I thought you were running errands," I continued, my tone betraying the storm brewing within me. "But it seems you found yourself other priorities." Clara opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Instead, she looked away, her silence louder than any excuse she could have offered. "Don't insult me by lying," I said, my voice low and cold. "I deserve better than that." Liam, emboldened by the tension, stepped forward. "Look, man," he began, his tone patronizing, "maybe this isn't the place for." "This has nothing to do with you," I snapped, cutting him off. "So stay out of it." For a moment, the air between us crackled with unspoken challenge. Liam shrugged, clearly unimpressed, and retreated back into the shop. The door swung shut behind him, leaving me alone with Clara. "Mark," she began finally, her voice trembling, "it's not what you think." I let out a bitter laugh, the sound foreign even to my own ears. "Really? Then why don't you tell me what it is, Clara?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what I think." She hesitated, her hands twisting together. "I didn't mean for this to happen. It just did. Things have been so strained between us lately, and I—" "No," I interrupted, my voice rising despite myself. "Don't you dare blame this on our marriage. I've been there, Clara. I've been trying. But you decided to throw it all away for, what? A thrill?" Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. "Not now. Maybe not ever again." "It's not like that," she pleaded. "Liam, he made me feel something I haven't felt in a long time. Alive. Desired. It wasn't about hurting you." I shook my head, a hollow laugh escaping me. "Not about hurting me? Clara, you've destroyed everything. Do you even realize that? Our trust, our family, our life together, it's all gone." Her tears fell freely now, but they did little to soften the anger coursing through me. I stepped back, putting a physical distance between us that mirrored the emotional chasm she had created. "I don't think I can do this anymore," I said quietly, the weight of the words crushing even as they left my lips. "Whatever this was, us, it's over." "Mark, please," she sobbed, reaching for me, but I stepped further away. "No," I said firmly. "I deserve better than this. Better than you." Without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving Clara standing there, her cries following me like ghosts. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Each step away from that shop, from her, was a step toward reclaiming myself. But even as I reached my car and slid into the driver's seat, the pain remained, a deep, gnawing ache that no distance could erase. I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror, a stranger staring back. For now, all I could do was drive. Where to, I didn't know. All I knew was that the road ahead would be long, and the scars left by Clara's betrayal would stay with me for a lifetime. The drive home was a blur. The rhythm of the tires against the asphalt did little to drown out the cacophony in my head. Every detail of what I'd seen at the repair shop replayed mercilessly, the stolen glances, the laugh, the excuses. When I reached the house, I parked in the driveway and sat there for a moment, staring at the familiar facade. The white shutters, the red door, the flower pots Clara had planted last spring, it all looked the same. And yet, everything had changed. I stepped inside, the house unnervingly quiet. Clara wasn't home yet. Whether she was lingering at the repair shop or wandering aimlessly as I had done earlier, I didn't care. The absence suited me. It gave me space to think. I wandered into the living room and collapsed onto the couch, my hands buried in my face. How had it come to this? Clara and I had shared a decade of life together, trials and triumphs, laughter and tears. But now, those memories felt distant, tainted by what she had done. The soft chime of my phone pulled me out of my thoughts. I glanced at the screen, Clara's name. For a long moment, I stared at it, my finger hovering over the decline button. But something made me answer. Maybe I needed to hear her try to explain. Maybe I just wanted to hear her voice one last time. "Mark," she began, her tone shaky. "I'm on my way home. Please, can we talk?" "What's left to talk about, Clara?" I asked, my voice weary. "You made your choice." Her breath hitched. "It wasn't like that. You have to believe me." I let out a bitter laugh. "Believe you? After what I saw today? After the weeks of lies? Forgive me if I'm a little short on trust right now." "Mark, I know I hurt you," she said, her voice breaking. "I know I made a terrible mistake, but I'm begging you, don't throw everything away because of this." "I'm not the one who threw it away, Clara," I said, my anger flaring. "You did. The moment you decided I wasn't enough for you." "That's not true," she cried. "You've always been enough. I got lost, Mark. I felt invisible, like I didn't matter anymore. And sleeping with a mechanic was the solution." I snapped. "What about talking to me, Clara? What about working on things together, as a team, like we always have?" Her silence was deafening. "I'll be home soon," she whispered eventually. "Please, just, wait for me." Before I could respond, the line went dead. I stared at the phone, her words echoing in my mind. Wait for her. What was there to wait for? A futile attempt to justify the unjustifiable. When the front door opened an hour later, Clara stepped inside cautiously, her face streaked with tears. She looked at me as if I were a stranger, someone she wasn't sure she could approach. I didn't make it easy. I sat on the couch, arms crossed, my expression cold and unyielding. "Mark," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry." "Are you?" I asked, my tone sharp. "Or are you just sorry you got caught?" She flinched at my words, but I didn't back down. "Do you even understand what you've done, Clara?" I continued. "You've destroyed the trust between us. You've broken something that might never be fixed." Her tears flowed freely now. "I know. And I'll do anything to make it right. Please, Mark. Don't give up on us." I shook my head, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. "You didn't just hurt me, Clara. You hurt us. You hurt our family." Her face crumpled, and she sank to her knees before me. "Please," she begged, her voice cracking. "I'll do anything. Just tell me what to do." I looked at her, this woman I had once loved so deeply. And for a moment, I felt the faintest flicker of pity. But it was drowned by the tidal wave of pain and betrayal. "I don't know if there's anything you can do," I said quietly. "Not anymore." Her sobs filled the room, but I didn't move to comfort her. How could I? The person who had once been my comfort had become the source of my greatest pain. I rose from the couch, her gaze following me as I walked toward the stairs. "I need time, Clara," I said without looking back. "Time to figure out if there's anything left to salvage. If I can even look at you without seeing him." Her cries grew louder as I climbed the steps, but I steeled myself against them. I reached the bedroom and closed the door behind me, shutting out the sound of her despair. I collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Could I forgive her? Did I even want to? The answers eluded me, but one thing was clear. No matter what came next, nothing would ever be the same. The next morning, the house was eerily silent. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling as the pale light of dawn filtered through the curtains. Clara had cried herself to sleep downstairs. I'd heard her muffled sobs fading into uneasy silence in the early hours. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, my feet touching the cold floor. The enormity of what had happened weighed on me like a lead blanket. Every fiber of my being screamed to get up, to leave, to put as much distance as possible between me and this house. But then there were the kids. Natalie, Jake, and Emily. They were at my mom's for the weekend, blissfully unaware of the storm that was tearing their family apart. For them, I couldn't just run. I descended the stairs, each step deliberate, my mind rehearsing what I might say if Clara woke. She was curled up on the couch, her face streaked with dried tears. The sight stirred a strange mix of anger and pity. I stood there for a moment, just watching her. This woman I had built a life with, now so foreign to me. How had we ended up here? How had she? As if sensing my presence, her eyes fluttered open. She blinked against the light streaming in from the window, and when her gaze met mine, fresh tears sprang to her eyes. "Mark," her voice was raw, pleading. "I can't do this right now," I said, cutting her off. The harshness in my tone startled even me, but I couldn't soften it. "Not yet." She sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders like a shield. "Please, we need to talk." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "Talk about what, Clara? How you betrayed me. How you threw away our marriage for that." Her face crumpled, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. The words poured out of me like a dam had burst. "Do you even realize what you've done? To me? To our family? I was faithful to you, Clara. I loved you. And you didn't even respect me enough to tell me the truth before it came to this." She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. "I don't have an excuse," she said through her sobs. "I don't. All I can say is that I was lost, Mark. I felt invisible. Like I was just a mother, a wife, like I wasn't Clara anymore. Do you think I don't feel invisible sometimes?" I snapped. "Do you think I don't get tired or feel like I'm just a provider, a paycheck?" But I didn't go looking for comfort in someone else's arms. Her sobs grew louder, and for a moment, I faltered. The part of me that had loved her for so long wanted to reach out, to comfort her, to wipe away her tears. But the larger part, the part that was broken, held me back. "I don't know if I can forgive this," I said finally, my voice low but firm. "I don't know if I even want to." Her head shot up, her eyes wide and filled with panic. "Mark, no. Please don't say that. I love you. I've always loved you." "Loved me?" I laughed bitterly. "You don't do this to someone you love, Clara. You don't destroy them like this." "I'll do anything," she whispered. "Anything to fix this. Just tell me how." I stared at her, the desperation in her eyes, the sincerity in her voice. But no amount of pleading could erase what she had done. The images, the sounds, they were burned into my mind, as indelible as scars. "I need time," I said finally, my tone colder than I intended. "I need to figure out what this means for us. For the kids. For everything." Her face crumpled again, but she nodded. "I'll wait. As long as it takes, I'll wait." I turned away, heading for the door. "I'm going to pick up the kids," I said without looking back. "We'll figure out the rest later." As I drove to my mom's house, the pain and anger churned inside me like a storm. I had no answers, only questions. Questions about whether love could survive betrayal, whether trust could ever be rebuilt, and whether I even wanted to try. When I arrived, the kids ran out to greet me, their laughter a balm to my wounded heart. I scooped them up, holding them tighter than usual, as if anchoring myself to the only thing that still felt solid. For their sake, I had to find a way forward. But as I looked into their bright, trusting eyes, I knew one thing for certain: the path ahead would not be easy, and it would never lead back to the life we once knew. The kids chattered excitedly as I drove them home, their voices filling the car with the kind of innocence I desperately needed to hear. Natalie was describing her latest drawing, while Jake rattled off a list of bugs he'd caught in Grandma's backyard. Emily, the youngest, sang off-key to a song only she seemed to know. I forced myself to smile, to respond in kind, though my heart wasn't in it. My mind kept circling back to Clara. Would she still be there when we arrived? Would she try to talk in front of the kids? The thought made my chest tighten. "Daddy, are you okay?" Natalie asked suddenly, her perceptive blue eyes meeting mine in the rearview mirror. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I replied quickly. "Just a little tired." She frowned but didn't press further. Emily reached across the back seat to grab her sister's hand, and the sight nearly broke me. I had to hold it together, for them, if not for myself. When we pulled into the driveway, I saw Clara's car parked outside. A wave of anger surged through me, but I swallowed it down. I couldn't let it show, not here, not now. As we stepped inside, Clara was in the kitchen, pretending to busy herself with cleaning. She turned when she heard the door, her eyes lighting up when she saw the kids. "Mommy," they cried in unison, rushing to her. She knelt down, wrapping them in her arms. For a moment, the scene looked normal, like nothing had changed. But it had, and the tension in the room was palpable. I stood by the door, my arms crossed, waiting. When the kids finally broke free of her embrace and darted off to their rooms, Clara looked at me, her expression a mix of hope and trepidation. "Thank you for bringing them home," she said softly, as if we were strangers exchanging pleasantries. "I didn't do it for you," I replied curtly. "I did it for them." Her face fell, but she nodded. "Mark, please. Can we talk? Just for a few minutes?" I hesitated, glancing toward the hallway where the kids' laughter echoed faintly. "Not here," I said finally. "Not where they can hear." She followed me into the backyard, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows over the lawn. I turned to face her, keeping a careful distance. "What do you want to say, Clara?" I asked, my tone neutral. "What more is there to explain?" "I know I can't undo what I've done," she began, her voice trembling. "But I need you to understand that it wasn't about you, Mark. It was about me, about feelings I didn't know how to handle. And you thought betraying me was the answer." I shot back. "You thought throwing away our life together was the solution." Tears streamed down her face, but I didn't stop. "You didn't just hurt me, Clara. You hurt them. The kids. They don't know yet, but when they do, what am I supposed to tell them?" She shook her head vehemently. "They don't have to know. We can get through this, Mark. We can fix it." "I don't think we can," I said, my voice breaking despite myself. "You've crossed a line that I can't uncross." She stepped closer, her hands clasped in front of her. "Please, Mark. I love you. I know I messed up, but I'll do anything to make it right. Anything." I looked at her, the desperation in her eyes, the raw vulnerability. And for the first time, I saw the cracks in her facade, the fear, the regret, the self-loathing. But it wasn't enough. "You say you love me," I said quietly. "But love isn't just words, Clara. It's actions. It's trust. And you've broken that." Her sobs grew louder, and she sank to her knees in the grass. "Don't leave me," she begged. "Don't take the kids away. I can't lose everything." I stared at her, this woman who had been my partner, my confidant, my everything. And yet, here we were, broken in ways I never thought possible. "I need time," I said finally, the words feeling hollow even as I spoke them. "Time to figure out what comes next. For now, you'll stay in the guest room. And we'll keep this from the kids until we decide how to handle it." She nodded, her tears falling silently now. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for giving me a chance." I didn't respond. Instead, I turned and walked back into the house, leaving her kneeling in the grass, the weight of her choices pressing down on both of us. Inside, I leaned against the kitchen counter, my hands trembling. The kids' laughter drifted in from the living room, a bittersweet reminder of what was at stake. For their sake, I had to hold on a little longer. But as I stood there, staring at the life Clara and I had built, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was already crumbling beneath my feet. The next few days passed in a haze of tension and forced normalcy. Clara moved into the guest room, as agreed, but her presence lingered in every corner of the house, a painful reminder of what had been lost. We spoke only when necessary, and even then, the words felt heavy, laden with the weight of everything unspoken. I focused on the kids, pouring every ounce of my energy into them. Their laughter and innocence were the only bright spots in an otherwise bleak reality. Natalie wanted to show me her drawings, Jake begged me to play catch in the backyard, and Emily climbed onto my lap at every opportunity, her tiny arms wrapping around me as if she could sense how much I needed it. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Clara knocked softly on the kitchen door. I was sitting at the table, nursing a cup of coffee and staring blankly at the bills scattered before me. "Mark," she said hesitantly. "Can we talk? Please." I looked up at her, taking in the dark circles under her eyes, the way her shoulders slumped as if the weight of her guilt was too much to bear. For a moment, I considered telling her no, that there was nothing left to say. But then I nodded, gesturing for her to sit. She took the chair across from me, her hands trembling as she clasped them together on the table. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "About us. About what I did. And I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, Mark. But I'm still asking for it." I said nothing, letting her words hang in the air between us. "I don't expect things to go back to the way they were," she continued. "I know I've broken something that might never be fixed. But I love you, and I love our family. And if there's any way at all, that we can rebuild, I'll do whatever it takes." Her words were sincere, but they felt hollow to me. I looked at her, this woman I had once trusted with my whole heart, and tried to imagine a future where we could move past this. But every time I tried, the memories of her betrayal rose up like a wall, unyielding and impenetrable. "Clara," I said finally, my voice steady but firm. "I've thought about this too. And the truth is, I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I can ever look at you without remembering what you did." Her face crumpled, but she didn't interrupt. "You made a choice," I continued. "A choice that wasn't just about you. It was about us. About our family. And you chose to destroy it for what? A moment of feeling desired? Was it worth it?" Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head. "No. It wasn't. It wasn't worth anything." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "I'll never understand why you did it. And maybe that's part of the problem. I can't understand it, and I don't know if I want to." She reached across the table, her hand hovering near mine. "Please, Mark," she whispered. "Don't give up on us. Don't give up on the life we built together." I stared at her hand, then pulled mine away. "I'm not giving up on the kids. But us? I don't think there is an us anymore." Her sobs broke the silence of the room, but I stood, unable to sit there any longer. "I'll stay here for now, for the kids. But I think we both know where this is headed." Clara buried her face in her hands, and I turned away, leaving her at the table. That night, as I lay in bed alone, I thought about the life we had built, the memories we had shared. They felt like shards of glass now, too sharp to hold on to. For the kids, I would find a way to co-parent with Clara, to create some semblance of stability for them. But as for our marriage, it was over. The next morning, I called the divorce attorney. There was no anger in the decision, just a cold, quiet resolve. Clara and I would go our separate ways, and I would rebuild my life from the ruins she had left behind. It wouldn't be easy. The road ahead was long and uncertain. But as I sat in the living room that evening, watching my children play, I realized I still had something worth fighting for. They were my future, my anchor, my hope. And that would be enough. Thank you for watching to the end. Write in the comments what you liked and what you would like to see next.